Hello there, my name is Joel, and I am the game designer for Sea Riders. I am here to discuss and dissect the design choices that I made for this project. On our team, we had our artist, David Wu, and fellow programmers, Romain Ducout and Jonathan Chuang. Sea Riders is a 2.5D tube shooter, modeled after the widely popular Star Fox 64. It tells the story of three sea animals that are trying to save the great coral reef from the hideous pollution monster, Gugulus. We wanted to try to make a game using warm, bright characters and themes, which contrasted the other projects with their gritty themes and first-person shooter gameplay. Now, normally when the player starts the game for the first time, there would be a prompt over in this area to try the tutorial. Since I've actually played the game before, I go into the options menu and I can play the tutorial here. Now this tutorial is fairly basic. We wanted to show something that anyone could understand. In the tutorial, we're going to look over some movement, shooting, and one of our features called absorbing. To start, the player could choose WASD movement, the standard movement that a lot of gamers already know. As we can see, how Sydney here moves along with my typing. We knew that most gamers were used to this, so we kept it pretty brief. We also wanted to introduce our stylized method of movement. Stylized allows the player to have their right hand and the mouse to move instead of the standard WASD. You would do that by holding down the right click and move the mouse. You can see that the cursor is actually leading Sydney along the path. This is the stylized moment. From here, we wanted to see if they want to keep it, so I like it, so I'm going to choose yes. Now, it also goes into a little bit of detail. The health is on the left side. The player's ammo is on the right. In here, again, fairly simple, using the left click to fire shots. Now this goes into what we call the absorb feature. The absorb feature allows the player to absorb these goo attacks that are being currently flung at me. And this is to refill their own ammo. Now what's also interesting about it is that we start absorbing, you can see the ammo there. We absorb too much, and then this error appears. We hold that for too long, it actually overloads the character and would cause damage. Now, in this tutorial, the damage actually is not caused, mostly because all damage in the tutorial is negated. Now I'm going to absorb just a little bit more, move away from the shot, and fire. And we see that a power-up has dropped. There are power-ups inside of this game which we can absorb themselves. And that ends the tutorial. Unfortunately, we didn't get around to updating the tutorial with some of the other attacks that enemy would use, like spiked attacks that hurt you when you actually absorb it, or the player's special abilities, which I'm about to go to in a second. Now this is the level up screen. This is where players use their experience to improve their damage with their standard shot and to unlock different features with their character. You can notice off to the right over here that this is Sydney, the first character that you get. The next character that you get is going to be Ollie. Ollie is a bit heavier, he's slower, but he has a massive power compared to the other characters. The third and final character that you get is going to be Van. Van is agile, swift, but his power and his HP is a little less than what the average Sydney would be. Those two are currently locked right now, so we're going to be playing as Sydney. You can see right here that if I had a score and XP to put to this, this is where I would spend it. I would spend it to increase the base attack of Sydney's damage. This is the Mega Beam. This is the character's secondary attack. This secondary attack is actually different for each character. For her, it's this massive beam that she shoots out. For Ollie, it's actually a napalm attack that sticks onto where he shot it and was constantly damage the enemies that are nearby. And then for Van, he has a homing attack that locks onto enemies and shoots homing shots. The final one is the Aqua Bomb. This is a massive bomb that clears all the enemy fire and deals massive damage to every enemy on the screen. This is similar to the large bombs that you could find in most games early in the 80s, 90s, in that video game era. The, oh no, I have to get rid of all these types of bombs. Now this is going to go into a little bit of what the story was going to be about, expanding a little bit and how Sydney came to interact with and appear against Googulus, slowly creating her ragtag group of friends to try to defeat Googulus. Now this is the level that we're going to be showing today. This isn't the first level though. This is actually a later level due to some technical difficulties that we've had. Now one of the biggest challenges that we ended up having is setting the enemies and attack patterns. What you see here in this first creature we called the line shooter, that lay down a path of spikes that the player has to avoid and not absorb. Other creatures include the goo drones and sharpshooters that haven't been made into the game. You can also see in front of me is this carrier here. This carrier, as you can see, is holding a power-up. Let's defeat him. And you see that that power-up is right there. And now I have an additional little set of buddies that help me shoot and deal more damage. Now we see another power-up. We saw this before in the tutorial, the health, just to bring that back up. Now again, as I'm using the stylize, you can see the difference in the cursor as I click it. And attempt to get these guys down. Oh! You notice that as I was trying to absorb and then move away after I stopped absorbing, the fire actually tracked to the character. This is a part of the give and take success and reward, risk and reward portion of the game. While absorbing, every obstacle will be attracted, even the spikes that, as you can see, which damage the player. Now, again, this is one of the more advanced stages, and it's getting a little bit more difficult than what the first player would have. And also, one of the interesting challenges we first had was actually this speed power-up. Before, it didn't, how it works is that it's the faster that Sydney is actually trailing and trying to follow my cursor. Before, we didn't set that with the WASD commands, and so it didn't really have an effect. That was changed, however. You can see a distinct difference with the WASD. Now I'm going to go over here. Oh, looks like I'm out. Now I have to wait for an appropriate enemy to fire goo shots that I can absorb, and not too much. Oh, and I got hit again. Now these different colored ones, these guys these goo drones fire actual spines, which now creates a problem when there are normal goo that's being fired. Now this sound is the sound of the warning that the main boss is actually going to appear. So I'm gonna get a little bit of health first. Now, we're going to be facing off against the boss. I'm going to top off my tank before he fires. we find that this boss is actually one of the more difficult bosses. Mostly because it requires patience more than not. Now, in addition, we had to add this one outlying shooter guy over here so that we can have a consistent attack and allow the player to keep refilling their ammo. Otherwise, this game would just go on until the player loses. Whoa! That was a little bit too close. See if the player absorbs too much, they have to immediately fire or get dealt damage. Ooh. As you can see on the bottom as well is the enemy's health. I'm currently doing a good amount of damage to him as he's overall in the red, and as I'm trying to fight him off. And that's it. Level is complete. I gained 340 experience points. They show different percentages there as well. In this screen we actually see what was beginning to be some of the dialogue that we had in between these characters. The dialogue in here set up was one of our first drafts, but that also was done by myself. Now, as we see, we go back to this screen, and now we have Ollie. In this case, I am actually going to go back to Sydney, and I'm going to increase her power. This is level 2. Also, understand that this isn't actually level 2, but this is one of the later stages afterwards. As you can see, it's very unbalanced, and it's very this was one of our testing stages just to get a test of how creatures would interact and how they would move. I'm dodging it right now, but I wouldn't dream to try to continue this. So, with that said, I'm going to end the game here. Well, I hope you enjoyed Sea Riders and my dissection of what we ended up doing for this project. If you have any questions or you would like to try to get a build of this game, please be sure to email me back. Again, thank you for your time. I hope